Hi, everyone. It's Louis Fernandez here with the LRF Group, and today we're going to be discussing with our colleague and associate up in New York in Manhattan's office, Mr. Daniel Hall. Of course, we constantly do this on a quarterly basis, talk about the markets, what's happening and affecting up in New York, and also what's affecting down here in Miami. So, with that, let me introduce Daniel Hall. Daniel, how's everything
Louis.
coming along, sir?
Good, Louis. Thank you. How you doing?
Doing awesome, doing awesome. Thank
Good
you
to
so
see
much
you
for
again.
once again being a part of this uh, enlightening, informative show that we're trying to do here, you and I. I think we and trying to keep all the customers, from both states up to date on what's happening with the real estate market. And so
Absolutely.
we talked last time about Q1, and
Yep.
and so today I wanted to cover see what's happened since Q1 to Q2. And so, how's the things looking up in New York and Manhattan in particular?
Yeah. Good, Louis. Thanks. I mean, we kind of see definitely a little bit of a shift right now. Q1 was fantastic, and I think that was kind of our peak, even leading into a little bit of Q2. But then, just towards the tail end of Q2, unfortunately, we did take a pretty drastic nosedive. The good news is, within the past couple of weeks, we have seen contracts now back up. So I think July, at the beginning of July, first couple of weeks of July, it was pretty much down. But now for the past 3 weeks, contracts have been up each on a week to week level. So, but overall, really, I mean, I wrote a couple of things down just statistic wise. I mean, from Q1 to Q2, basically, the median sale was up about 5%,
Right.
um, and about 11.3% from the same time last year in Q2. Uh, we've seen, the most significant really was more during the condo. The condos took a really big, that's been really leading the market. We've seen basically a 12% increase from last year in condo sales on median sale price, and only about up a half a percent from Q1. And, same thing with co op. It was unfortunately only about a 3% for co-ops. So condos really at 12% was pretty drastic. So we're pretty kind of excited for condos. Not sure why we're seeing that over co-ops, but pretty significant. And
Hey, Daniel,
for the most, yeah,
hey,
please.
Daniel, I'm so sorry to
No,
interrupt.
please.
Just for the folks down here in Miami, if you can explain just a little bit difference. What's the difference between a co-op and a condo? Because down here we don't have co-ops down here in South Florida as much.
Yeah.
So if you can help enlighten us a
Sure.
little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, basically, it's the structure of the building where you have a co op, you typically have one mortgage that's wrapped around the whole building. So
Hmm.
when you purchase in a co op, you're actually buying shares within that building. Um, then your common charge, your monthlies, typically the taxes being it's one mortgage, your taxes and everything's included. So you have a higher maintenance fee because it does include your taxes. Another thing, and kind of a negative in a way, or not really, but is that you have to have board approval getting into a co-op. So it does kind of help because that's one of the few things where they can deny you and they don't have to give any reason or anything along those lines. So it's a little tricky. You want to make sure that co-op board, you submit a package, you got to be on your best behavior, you have to go through an interview process, and they can deny you. And I've had that. So you go through the difficulty of getting a buyer, securing a buyer, just to have the co-op board deny them sometimes. So it's very important to make sure you know what the board looks for and you're putting forth the right candidate, not to waste everyone's time with them getting denied. So where a condo, you're buying that specific unit. So the mortgage is going, there's 100 units in the building. You have 100 mortgages on each specific unit. With a
Right.
co-op, again, you're buying shares. And there's much more flexibility with a condo. You can rent to anyone you want. Co-ops, sometimes they'll allow you to rent for 2 years, have to move back for a year rent. So they have a lot of laws, or rules, I'll say, not laws, rules. But the good thing about that is you're going to have a certain quality of life within that building because everyone in there is of the same mind where the pet policy is the same. So it's not just a bunch of randoms. You know who's in there. So there's good and bad to it, but in New York there's a lot of co-ops.
Let me ask
But
you this: Can you? I mean, and I would assume yes, but can you get out? Like, for example, you purchase into a co-op. Can one also pull a line of credit on a second mortgage, or is there any restrictions with financing?
They do have restrictions of financing. Sometimes they're going to require it's going to be minimum 25% down, or in some cases they'll still do 20. But you know, uh, they really don't want second mortgages. The co-op sometimes will not allow you to have um, you know X amount of roommates in there. Like it has whoever buys it has to live there. Even the guarantors, they don't allow that, especially with college kids and things like that, where you have a family member coming in and helping fund it. Sometimes they will not allow that. They don't want that. Some will, but a lot of the time they want the owner occupants in the building, no immediate rentals. You have to live there for 2 years, then you can rent after that, or minimum 1 year in some cases. But yeah, the finance requirements are there. And then as far as your income, they put income restrictions on there as well. So you may have a good down payment. They want to see, what are your reserves like? And, they take you through all of that. They don't want anyone getting in there and then, God forbid, foreclosing. Now the rest of the building has to make up for your monthlies. And, they don't want that. So they want to make sure you have really, really good reserves. And, sometimes the board is more difficult than the actual bank. They really put you through it to kind of make sure you're
Yeah,
a good candidate.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then for financing, then getting back to financing for a moment, the do banks like more to see co-ops, or they like to see more condom purchase? Condominium purchase.
I mean, it's so popular in New York that they're fine with it. Banks are used to it, and so it's no problem. They do have to get approved, and you'd be approved the same way. But it's a little bit jumping through some more loopholes. But
Mm.
the banks don't mind at all. I mean,
They don't
the
mind at
most
all. And
no.
you see, the trend I think in New York though it's more going into the condo type of structure in terms of bylaws. Is that, would you agree with that, or basically still about 50-50 in terms of co-ops being still the more popular one? But I think the new developments that I've seen in the last 5 or 8 years in Manhattan, I think they're more of the condominium structure. What's your
Uh,
analysis?
you are seeing it. I mean, that's why I think also you're seeing the 12% rise in condos versus only 3% for co-ops.
Mhm.
I think buyers, especially foreign buyers, want that, and it's easier for them because they can literally buy it and rent it immediately. So I think it gives much more flexibility. So I think it depends on who the buyer is and what's going to happen. But for the most part, you're still seeing a good mix between, yeah, 50-50, I would say. Maybe let me check on that ratio as far as condos versus co-ops, as far as actual buildings. But when you have an owner occupant, I think in those cases they prefer the co-op because they know what they're getting. They know their neighbor is not just going to rent to any person, where they know they're going to go through a board approval process. So they're going to still have a certain quality they can expect within the building.
I get it. Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: and what's driving the buyer's market right there now, and recently in terms of regards to the apartments and the condominium, who's buying right now? Are they just locals, or?
I mean, you're seeing the rental market skyrocket, and that's from all
Right.
these college kids. Everything else come back. The sales market, it's kind of really tricky right now to get our exact pulse of what the market's doing, because we're seeing inventory is down a bit. We've seen a 17% increase in off-market properties. So we're seeing a lot of sellers kind of pull off the market and kind of sit back. So that's driving supply down a bit, which actually now, as of late, has increased the contract sale. So it's very tricky. I mean, we do think we're in kind of a seasonal low. August, of course, in particular, these last 2 weeks are really slow. But on the past 4 week, where we think we kind of hit bottom in contract sales, which from say mid July, was probably our peak. Where now we kind of think we hit bottom in say the first week of August, where the past couple of we've seen an increase in contract sales. So it's kind of a unique situation where we're seeing supply down a bit, contract sales up, and that's probably because supply is down. A lot of buyers, especially in the outer boroughs. I do a lot of business in Staten Island and Brooklyn.
Right.
7 out of 10 buyers are still of foreign descent. Um, so it's really a good mix of people. You are seeing Manhattan, it's coming back. The commercial area is still lacking. We're still only about, if 50% back as far as workforce. So it's amazing to see that contract sales are still doing very well with this still hybrid situation you have where you have half the workforce only back at this point. So I think we're really hopefully have hit bottom. I think we're going to see increased. If the seller's realistic and they're priced properly, things are selling. If we're certainly not declining, it's kind of still leveling off. But as long as you're priced properly and you're a little patient, there are buyers out there.
Great, great. And so, yeah, I mean, I mean, for us down here, it's interesting. The From Q1 to Q2, we had, of course, I'm taking Miami, Dade, Broward, and also the Palm Beach counties. We went from, in terms of single-family homes and listings, we went from 4,839 homes from Q1 to, we went up as well to 9,344. Mind you, that's still very, very low. And for us, I mean, you're talking three major county areas, right? And there's a still very tight market in single family homes. We should, in any other given day and time, we should be seeing somewhere around 20,000, 28,000 in our MLS available in those three counties. So that just tells you that Miami is still one of the hottest places around. Now, in terms of the way that we classify down here in the homes, we classify A, B, and C structures. Which A homes are like the ones by the water. They're updated or brand new construction. They're very beautiful homes. The B style homes are similar to the A, but they're just not waterfront properties. And then the C homes are basically everything else, right? And on the A homes, it's still very tight. I mean, they're actually the amount of those properties available went down. On the B homes, it actually went up a little bit to it went up to, let's see, what was the number that I had here? It went from the first quarter from 1,400 homes to 2,300. So we have more B homes now available on the market. Still very tight. And then on the C homes, we actually went the highest on the first. We went from 6,000. It was, excuse me. Let me get the number right here because yeah, no, actually, the C homes we went from 2,900 to 6,700 homes in the second quarter. So what's more available are the C type of homes. Those are houses that are in the interior, what have you.
Yeah.
But still, over 9,400 homes in three counties that's really a tight market. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. And the condo market, we went up actually from the first quarter from 6,800 available units to 9,300 available units. Again, that's also very tight. We should be in the 20s and the 30,000 units for these.
Yeah.
If you take Miami-Dade, Broward, and West Palm Beach. So Miami, we're still very, very tight on the sales side for single family and the condo market. The rental market, we're also experiencing the same thing, like in New York, very tight market. There isn't enough properties to go around. People are still coming down here, and there's no crash coming in anytime soon.
No, I mean, I know, Louis, obviously New York and Miami, it's a lot of the same clients that we have, that snowbirds and all this. But where do you see the biggest pull of buyers coming from as well? Is it still the New York area, or?
Yeah, there's three categories. I think we're still getting the retirees that are coming down here, and we're getting the ones that are from the Trump 2017 tax changes in the law, whereby they're leaving states that were at that when that law came into effect in 2017, you could deduct property taxes in a lot of these blue states up in New York and California and Illinois, and then there was a limit put on that. So that's actually began the influx of a lot of those future buyers down here. So we're getting retirees. We're getting still the 2017 tax change laws that were in place, and we're also getting companies and corporations. We've got, I think it was. Let me see the number here if I have it somewhere here. But we had about 199 companies that moved down here, and
Wow.
yeah, it was no, it's crazy. It's like let's see, I'm trying to figure out the numbers here. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it actually was 122 companies that moved down here, and in the last 19 months, 122 companies that either made South Florida either their headquarters or their regional headquarters,
Yeah,
and that's something that we've never had, and here in South Florida, and in my 20 plus years, 22 years of working as a realtor, we never had so many of these big corporations and companies moving down here to South Florida,
yeah.
and that's something that is, and of course they're bringing in a higher salary base point, right? So, and that's also one of the reasons too that we are still in a supply problem here, and supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
So this foreboding about the markets crashing in here. I mean, maybe look, real estate's always been local, and there's no doubt in certain areas across the country you're going to have those dips, some more greater than others.
Sure.
But this correction that people are talking about, a major correction in real estate, I'm not seeing it, at least from where I'm standing. I mean, do
Yeah.
you think that's something that's also, are you seeing that over in New York or?
I mean, we are seeing a little bit, but not drastic at all. I mean, things are still kind of holding its own. The outer boroughs a little bit more. I think things have kind of really slowed down a bit. And
Right.
I just read something over on the West Coast. I mean, it's obviously not our market, but that parts of the West Coast is really getting hit hard with some decreases. So, I think in some cases it just it got so hot that it needed a little bit of a cool down. But I think we're really coming to a seasonal adjusted rate right now, where we're just kind of really, we're at our seasonal mark. I mean, we're not. It's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen in Q3. That's going to be a big indication. I mean, I think the inflation obviously has people worried a bit. The interest rates have people worried a little bit. Um, that all plays a factor. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think people are still shifting and moving, especially between our two states. A lot of people I know are still, jobs are transferring them, things like this, and so I still see that migration from New York down south. So I think, we're still fine because I feel like you probably have a lot of foreign buyers coming here. A lot of New Yorkers still moving there. I'm sure there's a lot of foreigners buying down there as well. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I just read something also, a statistic. They were talking about the Asian market, and it was a huge amount of how many bought in Florida as well. So I think it's this is what's fueling us at this
No,
point.
it's
It's all this
crazy.
foreign money. Yeah,
No, it's crazy. I tell you something. You mentioned a good point about the foreign markets down here. Miami's always been very attractive to Latin American
yeah,
countries, and so for the first time, I think, and I think in history, I mean, most of the countries of South America have gone left. So that's a major political economic shift,
yep,
and we're beginning to see money move out of those countries into safe haven places. Flight of capital, and of course the United States and especially South Florida is a convenient place to stop because the language is spoken here and the culture, etc. So we're now beginning to get more Latin Americans coming in and making Miami as their primary residence because they're leaving left leaning governments. That's one
sure,
thing. The other thing too is there was a report, an analysis that came out that right now the current population of the United States is around 333 million people, right? And they're projecting by 2050 to be close to 400 million.
wow,
400 million. And so right now the United States is netting it's 2.4 million a year or something like that of people moving in. So we're on track to hit that number by 2050. We are short currently of 5.6 million homes across the country. So if you
Wow.
do the numbers, I don't think it's going to be, unless we really go into overdrive in terms of building homes and building apartments and dwellings and things like that, it's going to be, for the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be a catch up, right?
That's right.
In terms of being able to satisfy that demand, unless something changes and people start leaving the country, whatever. But
Yeah.
so I think, yeah, the interest rates have gone up. Inflation is a major problem. I know we're celebrating and it went down a little bit, but man, it's still high. I mean, we've gone from very high inflation to not so very high inflation, but we
Yep.
still have high inflation, and that's something to be concerned about.
Sure is.
It's at 8.5. It's still a 40-year record. Uh, but the interest rates, I don't think it's right now at five and change. It's not really. It's not hurting our business. That's not the reason people, if they're not buying, that's not the reason. Would you agree
Right.
with that, or what's your analysis?
I do. I do. I mean, I unfortunately had a couple of deals fall apart because it was right. The people were right there, and when they, initially went into the contract, they didn't lock in. So I have had a couple of deals fall apart, and I have seen a lot of other deals that I think it was about 14% of the deals in contract. It was some crazy number that they were saying falling apart. So I think that was just for the initial people not locking in, being
Mm-hmm.
right to the max, and now unqualifying that rates are a couple of points higher. But now we're not really seeing it. I mean, we're seeing people still moving forward. I'm not seeing it as a big, big problem. Um, I think just in the initial increase, it definitely kind of shifted people. And, people who were probably overspending anyway, and they're probably putting themselves right at their limit. Now, those couple of extra points unqualifies them. So, they got to look for something a little bit less. So, not really, but in the very beginning, I did see an initial decrease in deals coming out of contract.
Right, right. We're almost approaching the time that we're going to have to say goodbye. We're at 22 minutes. I think 25 is our send off. But any new listings or any new properties you want to talk about that you're excited about, or something off market?
I mean, a couple of things happening. We have something really good coming up, actually in upstate in New York, right up here in the woods, right near the
Mm-hmm.
Monticello area, and nice piece of property on the lake. Have that coming up. We still have some great condos here in New York. A lot of good things right outside in the boroughs. So there's good inventory. There's good deals. Sellers are still looking to make deals. So the market's strong. I mean, it's really still a good time to get in there. There's really nothing like it. As far as 5 years from now, I think regardless, you hopefully we'll all still be up. So a couple of good properties I like to post, and we'll get those to you, Lewis. But especially these things right outside of Manhattan, you're an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and you're on beautiful lakefront properties surrounded by mountains. So it's really a nice little escape from
No,
the
that's
city.
beautiful. I love to go there one day and check it out myself. That sounds very attractive. Especially being able to get away and do a little bit of R&R. Yeah, down
Yeah.
here, down here, you mentioned something just before I forget about in terms of our inventory, what's available. We went from actually from 2.8 months of inventory in Miami to 3.4. So again, we're still a tight market too. Again, I
Yeah.
wanted to add that in there before I forget that. Because, and by the way, for those out there, 6 months is usually what's the baseline as even between buyers and sellers. So it's still a very very tight sellers market down here in South Florida. And but that's awesome. That's great. Well, listen, Daniel, thank you so much for joining once again. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. You really provide good insight in what's happening up in New York and Manhattan, and planning to go up there pretty soon and say hello to the team up there. Um,
Awesome. Absolutely,
thank you.
Lewis. Thank you. I always appreciate our calls. It was great. I can't believe we're in time already. It just kind of flew by. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you for that info. I definitely look forward to the next one, and definitely speak to you soon. And hopefully, I'll get down there to see you as soon as well.
Perfect. All right, Daniel. Take care, bud. Bye
Lewis,
bye.
thanks so much. Take care. Bye
Absolutely.
bye.